Welcome back, Dr. Fouzia. It's a pleasure to have you. Last time we talked about your work in passing legislation
Thank
and
you.
your work in ASHA, but today we want to talk about your work at Virsa as a Virsa executive and your work with the PCNA. So could you tell us a little bit about your career, about those two
PNC.
positions you held?
I associate with Pakistani culture a lot from the beginning. And therefore, both these posts were very close to my heart. The thing is that I was always in love with Lok Virsa because I visited it as a student when I was in third year of my college.
Okay.
And I could not believe that there were places like that. And I was totally in love with it. And I thought, once I finish my education, I'll go and work for some institution like that.
Right.
So when I finished my education, I went and visited them, and I told Lakshmi Mufti was the head of that institute at the time. And I told him, I definitely want to come and research there, and I want to overlook the library and all the research materials they have, and see if I could make books out of them, or proper packaging, so people can learn more about the culture. So that was the beginning, and that was my first stint, you can say.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then I went to the States for my higher education. So that was just my first leap into a professional world. Then when I finished my PhD and I went back, I was looking at other institutions also. I chose education, and I joined the Open Education University in Islamabad. So after a few years, the government, they had the post of the head of Lok Virsa. Lok Virsa is sort of a folk institute.
Right.
That position was opened, and a lot of people were talking about my name, and the government asked me to come for an interview.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, that is even better, because being the pilot of a satellite ship would be better. I could make a lot of policies and give it an overarching structure. So I participated in the process, and I was selected, and I was very happy. I understood later that a lot of people were unhappy about it. Those who were in line, that happens there in competition, etc.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was
What
happy
year was that, Fouzia?
I.
What year was that? When?
Huh?
What year was?
I think it was 2018,
Okay.
15, sorry.
15. Okay.
2015.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So I took on that job, and I was totally thrilled. And I was in the middle of some things in Washington, D.C. here, and I rushed back because that was a call from my government and my country, and in an area that I loved. So I rushed back, and I was welcomed in at Loksa for a while, and I was just full of enthusiasm, and I started my job there.
Okay. Yeah. I remember my good old friend Yasir Noman was there, and very fond of music, and many other people. I had many personal friends, Atar Rasool and Iqbal Jatoi and others. So your challenges must have started after you took over as the head.
Well, what I realized was that the government or the country, I don't know, whoever, wherever the initiative starts, they want to have more capable people. And they decide to pick out a star from the sky and put it in their institution and to have more light. And when they bring that star and they put it up, then they say, okay, according to the rules, you cannot shine.
Yeah.
So one says, huh?
Don't do anything.
That will be against the rules.
Right.
So you are not allowed to shine.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it took me a while to understand that, because I really believed the jargon of rules and what is in and what is not in. So, okay, that is against the rules. And then gradually, like I told you, I'm a researcher.
Right.
So I started observing what are the patterns. Then I realized that in this world, which is dominated by bureaucrats, and we call them babus, people who have their positions and they will die there in those positions, they play with the rules. And they are not simple people who would say, we have a good king, we have a bad king. No, no, no. They don't say, don't do this, do this. They play with the jargon of rules. This is
Right.
against the rules and this is allowed in the
Accordingly.
rules.
Yeah.
And if I'm nice enough, then this is allowed in the rules. So I started observing that and making notes. So whatever I got on paper was a separate story, and whatever I made in terms of my notes was a separate story. So I started writing, what do they say are rules and where can I go against them? Then I very quickly realized that those rules change every time I meet them. The rules are not what it says on the paper. Rules are what they say to me.
Okay.
And according to the situation. So then I found myself in the midst of this politics of rules. But I was thrilled with the job, and I knew the institution and the people quite well. But I thought that I should include all those who are in very good positions and who have something to do with the culture, and include them in my policy and in my plans and everything. So I invited people who were on the top uh, posts of PTV and Radio Pakistan and other cultural institutions, and we considered them like our gems. So I got them over and I said, suggest things to us. And they were so happy to see me in that post because they knew me for years also. And many of them were kind of my gurus, my teachers. Um, so I started including them. Again, this was not seen as a positive thing by many within our bureau. So then they called me and they said, remember that rule? You will not shine. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a struggle between the rules and between doing my job. But as I was very interested in research, I totally took on the section of research, the section of museum, and saw what are the traditional kind of beaten up tracks that Lok Virsa has been working on, and try and add new things also linked to our heritage, but something that would attract a younger generation. I wanted a younger generation to be very rooted in our own culture so
Yeah.
that they don't just copy things. Not that I am against cultural assimilation, but I thought that if you are rooted well in your own culture, then when you engage with other cultures, you pick up things, you learn things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not replace things.
It's enriching. Yeah. You know your
Yeah.
own identity and then you know how to
Yeah.
connect with
You take
others.
some,
Yeah.
you give
Yeah.
some, it'll be more
Yeah.
on an equal footing. So first thing I said to my ministry was that everybody has this smartphone in their hands. A cell phone was very common, and they put it on their ear, and that's their world. So if we want to have a museum and if we want young people to come and see that, we should have the whole narration of the museum on an app with pictures, with photographs. And that app should be translated to at least 5 languages. Some
Wow.
international languages,
Yeah.
some Pakistani languages. So
Okay,
that when
great.
somebody from Suabi comes to see Look, Virsa, they just don't look for KP exhibitions. They learn
Right.
about other provinces. So I said Pashto is a must,
Yeah.
and Punjabi and other Sindhi.
Yeah.
And then I picked three international languages, and I said that I talked to a donor group, and I said, listen, this is what I plan to do. Help me with the technology because I do not know the technology that well. So anyway, from Thailand, we got these instruments you can put around your ear and switch channels. And you can go into Dutch or German or Chinese or a Pakistani local language. And it took me a very long time to translate everything. First to make the narration
Yeah.
viable for younger people,
Right.
then to translate, then to get people, then I added music to it, then I added pictures to it. And at the end
Question.
it became a huh?
I have a question here. Did you do this all by yourself, or did you get support from the rest of the executives or your team?
Lok Virsa, yes. But for international languages and other local languages, I had to get people from outside.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And I used to talk to them very nicely, explain to them the benefits so that they wouldn't charge me too much. And and we added music. And then I had several friends who were professional recordists, and they would do free work for me so that it was professionally done very nicely.
Right.
And I made a special hall of music. I was very much into music. So I said, we have to say salute to our old singers and musicians, because people do
Yeah.
not know the names and the
Right.
faces.
Yeah.
So I picked up 5, 6 big ones from every province, and I made look-alike statues. And then I talked to their families, and very nicely I said, I want their clothes, things that they used to wear. And they were so happy and they participated fully. They sent me
Wow.
clothes and their instruments and their pictures. So I added those people into our music arena, music hall. And then we talked about them in all these languages. So because I felt that people need to know, if I ask any young person on the street, okay, who do you know? One folk singer from KP or from Balochistan, they would come up like that.
Right.
And they
Right.
should know some of their songs and they should know about them. So anyway, we went and we did all that. And at the end, I got into trouble because I was not allowed to shine.
Yeah.
And so my bureaucrat said, "Ki, what is this? People will take these instruments away in their pockets." And I said, no, don't assume that everybody who comes to a museum is a thief, please. They would appreciate this
Yeah.
listening to the whole museum narration in their own language. And there was a big fight and one after the other. And I said, let's do it on a trial basis first.
So if I briefly interrupt, it shows that basic rule of Babugiri is not to trust people. And what you were trying to do was to introduce a culture of trust, trust
Yes.
people. And that's what bothered them, made them uneasy.
Yes, and doing something unusual and shining is also against the rules.
Why is there so much mistrust or a culture of mistrust in these so-called bureaucrats?
Like, I would not say this is part of our heritage, but if we look at Babugiri heritage, yes, that might be part of the heritage. I learned many other things about them because I used to meet with them a lot and I had to deal with them. So I told myself, get to know them, chalk out the patterns so that I know which paths to take. So I noted 80% of the time the conversation revolved around praising them, not by me, but themselves. So there was a direct praise and there was indirect praise. So 80% of the time they would tell you stories about their childhood, about their difficulties and how they came in and they solved and how wonderful they performed. So that was one part. Then there was indirect also, because they would always have 2, 3 people junior to them in the room, and they would say, "Sir, do you remember that time? Do you remember when the president came and he appreciated you?" So, and on and on. So praise was one, mistrust was another one, politics of rules was a third one. These are very critical things that anybody who goes to work for a ministry or an institute from another country should remember these things, and also should be open to learning new things about them. And you will really fall into pit holes if you do not know that culture well.
Yeah, that mold in which they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one thing is, institutes like ours, who were so called independent institutes, are not really independent. And the Babus hate for these institutes to be independent. You know, sometimes there are parents who do not want their children to grow up and be independent. And
Yeah.
they always want them to ask everything from the parents. It's a little bit like that. So they would, their target would be, I'll just give you an example, to do 20 countries in 3 years or something, or 2 years. So then when the head of an institute would say, aha, there is a conference of UNESCO in this and this country, I want to propose this person who has been working on this theme for the last 2 years. And the ministry would send the papers back and said, nope, out of rule, because this person has a contract job, does not have a pensionable job. Okay, that's all right, because we are really gaining the strength.
Yeah.
And said, no, 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 no. This is not by the rules. So you have to come up with an. So you send another name, and everything is outside the rules. And they say you have to send a permanent person of grade 17 and above, and we recommend 1, 2, 3. So they would recommend their program officers or their SOs, they call them section officers, who are sort of, all rounders. They are not specialized in one role. But for conferences, they are good because they have worked in every area. So they would say, send one from our ministry. And if you do not send, then you are really an enemy. And if you send, you have totally wasted the opportunity, I would say, of giving some strength to your own staff. But they start checking out, okay, one country. And I used to think they were only anxious in going to the USA or Britain or country like that. No, no, no. Any country. Any country.
It's like a favor, receiving a favor, going and visiting and, some.
What is the point
Yeah.
of sitting in that job if you are not going back and forth to different countries?
Yeah.
And in Punjabi, we used to call Hutelana. Like
There's a thing, yeah.
swinging in the swing.
Yeah,
You go,
freebie, just get a freebie.
yeah.
You have been very obedient, so you deserve this as a reward. You were sent everywhere.
And
Yeah.
whenever a head of an institute is not very viable or quick to take on the suggestions of one of the babus, then you are in a bad patch. Yeah. And any person in
Yeah,
your
one
own
thing I have to remind you, if
yeah.
this expires, you come back to the same link again. Yeah, because it might expire in 5-10 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the fun parts was many also. I loved introducing new artists, singers, musicians, and I started having competitions in different provinces. That was new, and I was breaking that rule of shining. But I did do like a competition of rabab playing in KP, and I went to the smallest districts, and I had the preamble competitions there, because I wanted to grasp a lot of people. Only boys. I did not get any girls. But anyway, it was like
why couldn't you reach out to girls?
I reached out, but they would not participate.
All right.
I leveled the ground for the next time. Those who won the competition, there were about 20 boys, and I gave them an assignment. The next time I have this competition, you are going to bring your sisters, your cousins, whoever is good in your family. And they promised me that they will. I never got to do a second competition. But I'm just saying that in this way, in Sindh and Balochistan, I wanted to break that barrier between when you have professional musicians, then socially you look down upon them a little bit. There is a little stigma, Marasi, or you just say their names. And I wanted regular students and regular people working in small jobs to play that instrument, to break that barrier that this is not just designated to a few families. Anybody from that culture can play that. And that was a very successful attempt, because young people I know respond to competitions a lot more than they respond to invitations to perform. Yeah, that has more spirit in it. And then we recreated many traditional places in different provinces that were known for music. So we recreated that whole market, that bazaar. And I thought that was very good for younger people in KP, because they got to see that market from a different perspective. And they really felt the ownership of people. People can create these intersections and markets where they create space for themselves to talk to each other. That was great. And then the government of KP at that time, which is some years ago, they created a whole bazaar of their own on their own land, and they gave out those shops at a very low rent to musical instrument makers.
Okay.
And teachers, and a lot of good crafts. So that was, they realized that it really pays when you get your younger people involved in your heritage and appreciating your heritage. So there were many, I don't want to get stuck with Babugiri, but there were many good experiences that I had. But those good experiences were more because of my engagement with the other people of different provinces, with the artists, with the receivers of this education. And the experience I had with Babus was always, do not shine, do not come up with an innovative idea, do not send somebody else out of the country.
But you stretched the boundaries. You stretched the boundaries. You expanded your own space. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I harnessed on wherever I could get a response. Yeah.
Because one of my teachers used to tell me that if you want to succeed as a babu, just stay on the conveyor belt and don't do anything. Don't make any waves. You will go to the top. That's a secret.
And it is against the rules,
Yeah.
They have these fat books to throw in your faces. You cannot follow rules. You are going off the track.
Right. Yeah.
The time I spent in Lok Virsa was very memorable for me, for all the new things I did, for all the attractions that I had for artists, and they still remember me. So it was not all bad. It was just that I was learning this new world of rules, where rules were the guns, to punch you.
Yeah, one more thing before we move away from Lok Virsa. I think when you were there, you celebrated Nowruz also.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Many things. Actually, I had become very close to, I love the pluralism in my country, and especially Hindu communities and Baha'i communities and Buddhist communities and Christian communities. So we decided that we will take on their major celebration and turn it into a national celebration. So Christmas, we started celebrating like a festival. We had a full day festival. And there are a lot of Christians there in Islamabad community. And we told them, bring your whole families along. So Nowruz also, we told them we will have a whole festival, full day festival on Nowruz. You bring your families along. So we gave them stalls and families brought food and they sold food and they did all their rituals there. It was just wonderful. They were so happy, so happy.
Yeah.
And for me to do something on Lok Virsa, people would see it differently. I would be flying my satellite ship, but they would say, oh my God, the government is taking interest in our celebration.
Yeah.
So, suddenly I was the government.
Right.
Yeah.
So Holi and all these other festivals. Yeah.
And these communities were so happy. They said we could never dream of celebrating Holi openly in a government institution.
Yeah.
And I used to say there were a lot of threats also in general, not for these communities. But I used to have very good links with all kinds of security agencies, and I would make sure that there was full security around Lok Virsa.
Right.
So yes,
one last thing. When we were talking of this, what do you think of what happened to Basant in Pakistan?
Oh, it went into the world of Babugiri. Yeah, it is very sad. It was our festival, and that was one festival where I saw that every kid on the street was so excited about it. And Basant had different dates in different cities just so that they could attend each other's, a truly people's event.
Exactly.
But one reason after the other. And the reasons were so dumb. I mean, they said people are getting killed, but people are getting killed on the streets in any case.
You regulate it. It doesn't mean you stop it. Yeah.
You stop the traffic. You stop people from sitting in four-wheelers.
Right.
So there was no sense in that. And they would never come up with rules, proper procedures for those reasons. Exactly. They would make rules not to shine, but they would not make rules not to fly kites with this kind of door or that. No, nothing. It's like everywhere where people were happy, and it had a link between our history and us. Oof, that was a norm.
Yeah. Thank you. So let's move to PNCA.
Okay. Now, PNC, after some years, because when I finished Lok Virsa, then I moved on to other things. And I came to USA on a fellowship because I was into writing books. I was focusing on my research more. And in the middle of all that, then the government asked me to come and interview for this post, which was head of Pakistan National Council of the Arts. Now, early on, when Faiz Ahmad Faiz, the famous poet of the East, he was the one who created this arena of culture in Pakistan. At that time, Pakistan government was new. And I think he introduced more than about 20 institutes of language and culture and literature and all that. So at that
this
time,
was when he was Secretary Culture. Faiz was Secretary Culture, and Eric Cyprian was, I think, the first DG of PNC. Is that right? Yeah.
I think so. Faiz was the bigger head. Yeah.
Yeah, he was Secretary Culture under Bhutto's government, I think, at one point. Yeah.
And Babu Giri really gave him a lot of trouble. And he created this one cultural institute which was responsible for the folk heritage as well as the current culture. And then there was infighting and Babugiris, etc., etc. And then these institutes split into two. So the folk part became Lok Virsa and the contemporary part became Pakistan National Council of the Arts. So I was happy. I mean, I was kind of linked to Lok Virsa, even though these institutes are not fully linked. But, I was still with the artist and with, I would say, communities that are not given enough attention. So I started working for PNCA. And I realized that Babugiri was similarly on my head. And again, they said, Ke to shine is against the rules. So I thought, why are they doing that? And then I realized that almost everyone had a candidate who they thought would win the race. And because they did not, they hated me. And they created this rule: to shine is against the rules. And to be innovative is against the rules.
Can you clarify, like, win what race?
Yes. Oh, the race of winning this post, like winning to be the selected candidate for the post.
Okay.
This was the race. Now in Lok Virsa, maybe that would have been true. I do not know, but I know there were at least 15 people from within the institute who had applied to be the head of the institute at Lok Virsa. That I realized later. So obviously there are animosities, when your candidate does not win. So for PNCA, I learned that even, I think the former head of PNCA, his son was also in the race, and other babus had people, how they place the bets for horses to be in the race. So obviously when their horse did not win, so they were against me.
So is it not based on meritocracy? Is it just like you get referenced up to the position, or is there like a formal election?
No, it is a board that selects you. So you are interviewed by a full board, and that selection board is created by the ministry. The ministry somehow gets a big hand in selecting the heads of institutions. And that is why there are institutions who do not have a head, and for years they do not have a head. And sometimes the Supreme Court has to take notice and say the ministries better fill these positions, because there is all this infighting whose candidate will be and who will be on the selection board. I mean, that alone is a pretty political thing.
Okay.
So so it is very political, what questions and what not. But anyway, I got the position totally on merit, and the whole board unanimously agreed on my name. So I was happy. I mean, I was familiar with a few people just because one is from that field and one knows people. Not friends, but knowing. And many of them I did not know. I must say I was not too impressed by the questions. With some I was. So whatever that mumbo jumbo was, I was selected. And then I got this whole set of rules thrown in my face again. That in order to travel outside the city, I have to get the permission of the ministry. In order to do this, in order to do that. So I was surprised. I thought, this was an independent institution. Then I started reading rules because I'm a researcher. I started reading rules and I thought this was not part of the rules, that I have to do this and that and the other. Then I realized the story was true here also. Rules are whatever they say verbally. They say this is part of the rules and this is not part of the rules. So all the paths were into getting our babus more trips abroad, get their own people in different jobs, even the jobs of drivers and PNs, the carriers. Oh. Like they would be sifarishes and phone calls and pressure. Hire these people, hire these people. Arey Baba, I have to think about if I want a cameraman or a camera woman, I need to see the technical side of the person also. Magar, no way. Then you are in the wrong group. So anyway, the dealing with Babugiri was a big thing. And I realized that they tried to create rules that would take away the autonomy and the authority of the head of an institution. because they wanted the institutes to be dependent on them. And then I tried and figured out, why don't they want to hire somebody and hire good people and let the child take on its path? And that was because, now this is another side I want to reveal to you. That was that when there is no head of an institute, then the bureaucracy gets this opportunity to appoint somebody from within as the head of the institute.
Okay.
So the cultural institute will be headed by, let's say, a joint secretary or somebody who has been in agriculture for a long time and does not even know the definition of culture, but sitting on top of an institute which has 200 staff and about 25 cars and maybe 2 buses and a big fat budget is a wonderful thing. And
Yeah,
when
it's a power game. It's using public office for private gains. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And they love that, that authority. And then from time to time, there are posts that are vacant, or even they can hire on contract. They can please this set of friends or those friends or political friends, whoever. So this is a very common thing, that do not hire a head of an institute, or at least a competent head. And then from time to time, field people, your friends from the bureaucracy, temporary post there. And that you will notice happens in Pakistan a lot, a lot.
Have you ever considered just following the Babagiri pathway up to the top, climb the ranks, and then change the ways when you're in that position of power?
Wow. For that, one has to be very brave. That means I would have to do a lot of those things too, and say, how good is Fouzia Saaed and blah, blah, blah. And no, I did not. And I could not think of joining a ministry because I didn't think I would be able to breathe. I loved these institutes because institutes are independent, or supposedly independent. Like I said, I like to be a part of a shuttlecraft rather than a mainframe, big,
right.
Big craft.
Fouzia, if you want to tell some story before we finish.
Okay, one complaint I can tell you, which is kind of funny. One complaint from the artists, from the singers, musicians. They used to tell me that, the babus, the afsarans, they do not know us. Because when they would walk into my office, I would say to whoever was around me, this is so and so, and his father won this award, and he was the first one to represent Pakistan in Iran or in this country, in that country. So they would feel very good that I know them.
Yeah.
I would always complain that these papus do not know them. And they always say, so what do you do for life? So they would say, well, I play tambura and I sing historic epics of Balochistan. So they said, can you do something and can you tell them about us? So we feel that they at least know us. This was very funny to me. And then gradually I realized that when I would say Dambura, this is a Dambura player, and they said, what player? So I realized that I had to first tell them what a Dambura is and then talk to them about the artist. But that was just I would find that very funny.
It's humanizing. Basically, that element of humanized relationship is missing. That further strengthens this mistrust between the power and the people.
And also for us, you can tell that you should have some knowledge of the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And then sit in the ministry and then become the parents of that field,
Yeah, yeah.
You don't even know ABC and then you want to make all the decisions.
I think these two messages are very great. Fouzia will conclude here.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us time.
Okay.
And let's stop it here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.